our bot in here. And finally, get the Discord link posted. So, make sure that that's all turned on. The Discord link posted. So, all right, looks like that's good. So, hello everyone. This is Chris Ingerson, and it is I want to say January, but it's not January yet. This is December 29th, and this is the December 29th Text Quest Devstream. So, today we are going to be doing a little bit of cleanup on some of our interaction code, and specifically we are going to be starting off by allowing our verb outputs to handle um, setting data in a way that is not just blatant bool values. So it's not just going to be true or false anymore. We're going to look to add support for incrementing and decrementing numbers. So you'll get, for example, if we have, let's say, 5 torches in front of you and we want to open the door when 3 of them are lit. Not 3 specific ones, just any 3 of them. Currently, the way that we would have to do that is we would have to make individual values, individual bool values for each one of those torches. Then we would have to, every time a torch is interacted with and lit or extinguished, we would have to run a check to see like, is this bool value set? Is this bool value set? Is this bool value set? Is this bool value not set? Is this bool value not set? And basically, what I'm getting at is that it's a very tedious process. But with the new structure that we're going to put in place, it would be as simple as just anytime any torch is interacted with, we just check a single value and say, is it equal to this amount? Is it a number that's equal to this amount? And if so, then great, we're going to use it. Or it's valid and we can do whatever we need to do once those torches are lit. So let's go ahead and open up our verb script. And you can see I kind of was poking around here thinking about how I was going to structure this today. So basically the way the output system works, and we're actually going to change this after probably while we're doing this, because the way the output system works is you interact with an object. Actually, let me just jump over to one of the test scenes. So to show you how this works, you just interact with an object, and then you say, type whatever verb you want. That then checks to see what the input was, does all the stuff that it needs to do to parse your input, and determine what output it should give you. And then once it does that, it just grabs the output that's correlated with the output index specified by that interaction, and that's how we get our output. So for example, if I say hit, we do that, hit, you'll notice that we're getting different sounds and different, well, actually the sounds is the same, it's just Fmod, but we're getting different outputs. And that's because we are using a special index. So it says, you strike the object. And if I stop interacting and then hit it again, you'll notice that it starts back at the beginning. We can keep doing that. But if I keep doing it, it's just going to give us the last output. And that's because this particular interaction on this particular object is flagged to not reset whenever you interact with it. So that part's fine. We're not going to worry about that. The actual indexing is perfectly functional. We don't have to worry about that. But we do want to change how the data ID is set. And in the long term, our big goal overall is to just change how this works. Because right now, all we do is we basically call get output, or we don't even call get output, we just get the output via a getter. And it automatically handles plain audio and incrementing its expected output index and all that. So you can see we have that being set here. But that's a little confusing. So we probably want to break these out into distinct methods. So we'll say get text output and then get audio output as 2 separate function calls. And the reason for that is that it gives me a little bit more control over how audio is played and where it's played. Because one of the shortcomings right now of this setup is because the verbs themselves have to know about where they're going to play audio, or rather their output audio does, we have to pass in transform values whenever we're parsing all this stuff. And it would probably just be easier to say, like, if we don't have a set transform, which is what this position is, then we just use the default interactive objects transform. But the problem is that verb is not a mono behavior, so it doesn't have that concept. It can't do that. So it's a little more confusing than I would like, but It is what it is. So we're going to streamline that today. But to get started, we're just going to go ahead and change how our data is handled. So let's go ahead and, I guess first things first, we're going to want to go to update output data. So this is the function that we call whenever we want to set the actual bool value, and we need to change this. So we're going to have to do a couple of things. Let's go to definition here. And actually, you know what? Let's look at the inspector for this. I'm going to stop playing. I'm going to select this chair. And we're going to show you the verbs, or the outputs for hit, because it is the thing that has multiple values here. So what we want to do is we have an output type, but that's not actually what we need. That's just determining what happens when we do something or when we input that particular verb. What we do want to take note of is output ID, which itself right now is fine. Like this part doesn't need to change. That's just a data ID. It can be any data ID we want. But here's where it gets tricky. So we need to add some fields. Specifically, we need to say what type of data it is and what it should do when that data needs to be set. So currently we have three things: true, false, or toggle. If it's set to true, that means anytime this output happens, it's just going to set whatever this output ID is to true. Anytime it happens, if it's set to false, it'll set the ID to false, and if it's set to toggle, it'll basically flip between the two. So if it was false before, it'll set it to true, and if it was true before, it'll set it to false. So we need to expand on that functionality to allow different types of data to be set. So that would be bool, float, and integer. Those are the three that I think we need. It might also be good actually to support string values, just because we could potentially use that for something. So we might as well. Although that gets to be a little more specific, yeah, we'll still do it. Well, yeah, we'll still do it just because that could be useful. So we'll want to expand it to different types first, which means we're going to have a field for data type. So it's going to have to specify bool, float, int, or string. And then on top of that, we're going to need to have a enum that specifies the value that's going to be set. Hello, Manatee TV. Welcome to the Devstream. How are you doing today? So let's go ahead and start with an enum to determine type, which I think I might already have, actually. I just need to figure out which one I'm using for that. So let's see, public. Let's look for the word type. That's probably going to give me a lot. I think variable type is what it is. Yep. So these are the three I need to support, so I can go ahead and just use that. So we'll say output ID, or how about output data type is equal to value type dot bool by default. And what's really funny is, so I have something called data value type, which does not actually specify a type of the value. It rather specifies what its actual value is. So we might keep that the same for now. Let's go ahead and save that. Now the downside to that is I'm going to have to add, of course, some new information here, which is going to be fun. So I should probably add it all at once. So we're going to say data value, as well as, let's go ahead and say, so I think we're going to want to change data value a little bit. Let's go to definition. Just came home, doing great. Well, that's great. Where'd you come home from? Or was it just like a brief interlude outside of the house? Okay, so we can get rid of you. We need to have all those extra namespaces. So we want toggle. Probably how we want to do this, honestly, is just going to be set is equal to 0. And I really don't want to affect the original values, so I think we're going to do this. We're going to do set increment is equal to, how awkward, decrement is equal to 21. Those are, I believe, the only things I need. Hold on, let me look at my Trello board here. Here we are. So we have that, and I guess we'll just say, so set, increment, decrement, true, false, and toggle. That's probably all we really need to do. I guess that means that I could actually move these guys down to here. View. Why are you people? Adding with my girlfriend. Ah, fun. Hello, Cache Override. Welcome back. How you doing today? Let's make sure these line up. Or do they not? I get it. Okay. That's why. So we're going to go ahead and save that. So those are our types, and I think that's all we really need. And let's see here. I think we're going to need a couple of things. This is going to be rough. So we want this to be, I guess it would be a public int output data int value is equal to 0. Float output data float value is equal to 0f. And the string is a special case, so we don't really need a field for that. And our bool value is also kind of a special case, so we don't need to worry about it. Maybe I can do int. That's fine. So let's go ahead and go back to our verb drawer real quick. Let's see, draw obtainable items, get property height. Here we are. Get output height. We do need to do this to the output. So we're going to say height, field spacing times 2f, property, success effect. Okay, so we just need to add one more thing to this. And then when we come up to here, hold on. References, draw output section. Okay. And when we add our output ID here, we're going to go ahead and just copy this chunk of code, paste that there. We're going to, I don't really, no, that's fine. I don't really see the need to have this here, actually. No, that's fine. I'll leave it there for now. So this is going to be our output data type, which I don't really see the need to have that there, so we'll go ahead and let that go. And that should have that show up. That should be all we have to do. So let's go ahead and let that compile. Doing good yourself? I'm doing all right. It's good to be getting back into the swing of things. Holidays kind of distracted me a little bit. Although, admittedly, after the Devstream today, I have to pivot to something else that I'm working on, which is a little annoying, but it is what it is, I suppose. Working on a game concept, actually. Been working on it for a while. So when I was sort of complete, I'm hired dev to help me. Oh, cool. What's your concept? And why does it look like we have so much space going on here? Like, look at how, well, maybe it's just my imagination. It just seems like these fields are closer together and this one has tons of gaps. Well, whatever. So we can set what type it is here. And here's where things are going to get a little interesting. We probably don't want to allow certain values here. So for example, it would make sense for us to have a float that you can set to false. I would like to have some sort of safety check there that perhaps highlights it. Oh, that would make sense. I can just do that. So let's go ahead and... So we're going to... Oh dear, have some fun. Oh man, all kinds of fun is about to be had here. So we're going to have to separate these a little bit. We're going to go ahead and cache this value because we're going to need to reference it multiple times. And we'll have to reference you multiple times too. So that's cool. Let's go ahead and copy this. We're going to say serialized property. Data value is equal to this. Let's go ahead and copy this as well because we'll need it. We're just going to put all this up here. Serialized property is equal to that. I guess we'll call it data type. Okay, data type, and then this is going to be data value. Okay, let's see. It's kind of secret, but I'll drop a little info. There's a nice cartoony kind of look. Oh, nice. Always a fan of the toon shader stuff. Surprisingly, I feel like a lot of games don't actually use it very well. I think some use it. Well, actually, most of the games that I see it nowadays are typically more anime aesthetic than like toon cell shaded aesthetic. I think your Wind Waker's like the extreme side of the toon shading. Which actually falls into my favorite categories, which would be like Suda 51's No More Heroes style or Killer 7, which are very cartoony, but they crank that to the extreme, which actually I think works in their favor. Anyway, so we have our two serialized properties, and now I'm going to do this. So we're gonna go ahead and say if. So we're actually gonna do this. Let's move this down here to the bottom. Well, no, we'll do that. So we're gonna go ahead and just say color cached GUI is equal to GUI.background color. Okay. And then at the very end here, we're just going to say GUI.background color is equal to cached GUI. And what we want to do, we're just going to kind of set that here, is we're going to just say switch data type dot int value, and we are going to cast that to a variable type. Say case variable type dot bool break. We'll kind of just go through here, I guess. So we're gonna say case bool. So we're gonna say string. Say hi to the cat because the cat wants attention. And then we'll say int and float. Alright. There will be a combo of my favorite game types. Ooh. Mashups are usually pretty fun, so I'm curious. So, let's see. For the idea here is basically I'm just going to tint the dropdown based on what values are set with what data types being targeted. So it'll be red if you can't use it, and I guess yellow if it could be used, but will be not great. Probably I'll just do red and white. So if it's bool, we're just going to say switch data value dot int value. And again, we're going to cast that over to a data value type, I believe. All right. And then from here, we're going to say data type dot. All right. So if it's set, we actually never need to do anything, so we don't have to worry about that. We only need to change color under bool if it's set to increment or decrement, I believe. This is the only time we really need to do it. Oh, geez. Except, okay, no, never mind. We're going to go back up to here, and I am going to add a public bool output data bool value is equal to false. All right, so we're going to go to verb drawer, and we're actually going to get rid of false and true, and instead we'll use set. So we'll get rid of 2 and save 1. Because then we can use that bool value there to directly set it. So let's go ahead, and we don't need to address those because we're just going to strip them out. All I'm going to do here is say GUI.background color is equal to color.red. Okay. We're going to go ahead and copy this. We're going to move down here to string. And we're actually going to do this. We're just going to say case data ID value type dot set. We'll just break out there. Otherwise, we're going to say default background color dot red. So for string values, we only want set to be a valid one. We don't want anything else to work. So int, we will go ahead and say, let's paste that in again. So we're going to change this from toggle, I think, is pretty much the only thing we don't care about now. So we're going to get rid of that. And that is actually the case for float as well, so we can just kind of cheat and do this. All right. So now, if we were to let that go, let's let that compile, you should be able to see that our data value here will instantly actually go to false, or will go to red. Oh, actually it won't, because false is not a flagged one. It's only going to do that if it's set to toggle. But we should be able to basically switch between our various data types and get different colored tinting on our data value, just to make sure that we don't accidentally set a value in a way that's incompatible with what our system is doing. Okay, so let's go ahead, let this switch over to string. There we go, it's red. If we set it to float, if we set it to int, and we set it to toggle, it goes to red. Set it to increment, that's correct. We set that to string, and it's anything but set. Should be red. Nice. So that makes it a lot more obvious when we have a setting that's not correct. So I can instantly just see it without having to scan for it. I can just pop over to the red. We're going to set this back to bool. Set this to toggle, that's correct. We set it to increment. Set it to decrement, cool. So all that seems to be working. Now what we need to do is we're going to make it so that when we have our data type set, if it's anything other than a string, we're going to get a little entry field over here to the right. That's going to be the value. And we'll be able to basically set what our expected value is there. So I think what we can do, one, is come up here to output data type. Let's go ahead and add a tooltip to that, because I should do that so I don't forget about it. This is going to say determines how the target data is set. Let's see. And our, well, actually, I guess that would be closer to our data value. So this is going to say determines what value to set the, what type of value? Type of value to set the output data to. Okay. So let's go ahead and let that compile real quick. That should just give us a little bit of a tooltip when we hover over this. So while that's happening, let's go to verb drawer, and things are going to get interesting here. And by interesting, I mean complicated. Let's see. So we basically want to say, I guess we'll just do this. So we're going to say switch, blah, blah, blah. Nothing's going to work with that yet. We're going to go over here to int value, copy this. Actually, can I get away with... Yeah, okay. I guess I could just do that in the same statement. It's just going to make that a little bit more of a monster statement. I don't know. Nah. Let's streamline that a little bit. So I will make this in two separate switch statements, just because, again, it'll make it a little bit easier for me, I feel. So we're going to come up to here. We're going to say case variable type dot string. We'll break. If it's the string, then we're just literally going to do this. I'm also going to go ahead and get rid of this label because I don't think it needs it. Hello, Travis. How are you? Sorry, I had to stretch in the middle of my greeting to you. Welcome back. How are you doing today? Okay, so if we are of type string, we're just going to draw the default. We don't actually care. If we are of type bool, we're going to break, and we're going to do some fun rect transform stuff. I kind of want to actually just do this like this: case dot float, case dot int, and then we immediately will have another switch statement, which kind of sucks, but because then we can do this. So it's a switch statement within a switch statement that has the exact same value checks. I'm just using it like this so that I can do operations that would be needed in all three of these in one go instead of multiple times. Doing all right, and yourself? I'm doing all right as well. As always, we'll see how the stream goes. If I recall correctly, I got the new smash, or you got the new smash. I did get the new smash. Did you get it? Who do you main? All right, so here we're gonna say case blah 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 dot bool. We're gonna break, and we're not gonna worry about stuff there yet. So here is where things get a little more iffy. I need to say position dot width minus equals. I'm going to say 50. I think that will give me enough. And then we're just going to come back here and say position dot width plus equals 50f. And then we're going to go ahead and make a new rect transform, or not a rect transform, sorry, a new rect. This is going to be our value position is going to be equal to a new rect based on position. But we're going to want to say, we're going to want to do this. We're going to want to say width is equal to 50f and x is equal to position.x plus position.width. I think that's all we really need. Everything else should be the same. And then we're going to come down here and we're just going to say editor GUI dot property field based off of value position followed by property, which is, I guess, just going to be property.find. Yep, okay. Property.find property relative, blah, blah, blah. And then we're going to say GUI content.none because we don't want it to have a label. So this is our bool value, so I want to use this. Okay. So that should, in theory, draw the bool toggle to the right of our dropdown. I probably need to offset it somewhat, but this should make it work. So let's go ahead and let that compile so we can see it. We should also be able to see, yep, there's our tooltips. Oh, output ID won't have one, but these ones will. Cool. I didn't. I just wanted to ask you how it was. All right, let's go Eevee, Genesis Collection, and Mario Party. Oh yeah, I forgot there was a Mario Party that came out for the Switch. It's pretty fun. I recommend it. I think they. Oh, 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 oh. Um. Hmm. Oh. Ha! Duh. That's because I'm quite silly. Um. I actually think that this just needs to go up to here. I think that'll do everything. Will not. Will not do everything that I want. I need to put it back here, and that sucks because then I have to just do that here. That's not too bad. Okay. Um, how is Let's Go Eevee? I'm curious because I wasn't a really big fan of Pokemon Go, um, and it seemed like they were kind of striking a compromise between the two forms of Pokemon, and I don't know about that. So I'm curious to know how it is. But the original or not the original Smash, the new Smash game is pretty fun. The adventure mode is it's okay. I'm kind of sad that they didn't go more the subspace emissary route because I'm pretty sure we're not going to see something like that ever again. And it was so much fun seeing all of the characters interact with each other in weird ways in the cutscenes. But the new adventure mode isn't bad per se. It's more like a it's kind of like a weird mix of All Star mode and the event modes from previous games. So I don't know. Not as much of a fan of it as I would have liked, but it's not the worst thing in the world. Like I said, it's still pretty fun. Okay, there we go. So now we have our data value. We can set this to be whatever we want. We'll get hilarious. I guess that kind of makes sense actually. Let's go ahead and set that to be a float. Let's see what that looks like. All right, so we're going to go ahead and pretty much just duplicate this with some minor differences. So this is going to be our int. This is going to be our float. This is going to be int value or IBMT, and then float value. So that should properly display all three of our types there. And I think when I have the bool, it's just gonna scoot it over a little bit so it's more centered. Because this is too wide of a space for a bool, but it's a perfectly wide enough space for an int or a float, I feel. Oh, I did also get Katamari Reroll for Christmas, which was very fun. Although, admittedly, I've never actually played the Katamari games. Maybe I played like a demo of it way, way back in the day, but I'm not going to count that. Um, so it was kind of interesting getting used to the analog controls, like the way you have to move laterally, like left and right, differently. It's kind of interesting to me. Anyway, so if we switch this to an int, we can say like 12 and not 12.5. But if we go to float, we can go to like 25.4. We can toggle between those. We get our bool. Cool, that sets it to be that. We're going to set it to set. And if we do float, that should also work. So I guess I could just make the bool one longer. I prefer it to have parity. Maybe I can shorten that. So how about 30 instead of 50? So let's go up to here. Let's say 30f. We'll do an even 25. I say even as I go down from an even number to an odd number. Set this to 25f. And I think that will help a little bit. And we're just going to move this and say value position dot x plus equals value position dot width divided by 2f. I think that'll probably be fine. Well, it's okay. You're in the right place for walls of text. So let's see. Well, the two work with each other in small ways, but the only thing in Let's Go that's remotely close to Go is the catching mechanic. The thing is, it works. When you see, or when you're searching for wild Pokemon, you can actually see the Pokemon on the overworld before you can battle them. I did hear that they did that, and that's kind of cool, because it takes random battles out of it, but that also could be frustrating depending on what it is. I don't know. A lot of people are upset that you don't battle the wild Pokemon, but you're just catching them or grinding them for experience, both of which are included in the new catching system. Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I wasn't a huge fan of the Pokemon Let's Go stuff. So when they, okay, so 25 is okay. Let's bump that up to 40, I guess. Actually, well, no, that's good. So we're gonna say equal to 35 minus 40 plus 40, and then we're gonna say plus 5f, so we have a little bit of padding there. See if that gives us enough of a width to be usable. Should just like bump us over to here, I think. 5 is the most even odd number. That is true. Technically 0 isn't an even number. Although it is 30 is because it's divisible by 2. But technically 0 is a weird number that's neither even nor odd. But it generally does get treated as even. Alright, so let's see this bump over just a little bit. Okay, I think that's good. So let's go ahead and set that to be increment. Nice. If we set this to be a string, it's not going to do anything. It's just going to be set. If we set this to be a bool. Okay, so it's a little far over there. I'm not a huge fan of that. So maybe I should divide it by 4 instead of by 2. Okay, so that should just push it over a little more centered. I just wanted to have the control be less spaced out and have it be a little bit more centered. My main complaint with Let's Go is that the rival is way too nice. It's set in Kanto, but there are some really cool new things, though. That's cool. What are some of the new things? I did hear about the rival thing. Like, I heard people complaining that he was too nice, which I'm surprised people are complaining about that now because I remember, I think it was X and Y, was it? Pretty sure it wasn't black and, well, maybe it was black and white. It was either black and white or X and Y, where you had like 3 rivals and they were all just super chummy with you. I think it was actually X, or I think it was black and white. But you had 3 different rivals, and all of them were varying degrees of like, let's go do our best. And I'm like, it's a little tropey, a little anime type, but yeah, I can dig it, I guess. But I don't know how nice the new one is. I've just heard people complaining about him, so I'm assuming that he's just super nice. After generations of your rivals treating you like trash, I'm surprised that they are surprised that people didn't like friendly rivals. Okay, there we go. So it's a little more centered. Nice. And if it's set to toggle, oh right. Uh, hmm. So I don't really have a need for this if it's set to toggle. Crap. Excuse me. I had to sneeze. Sorry. So if it's set to toggle, it doesn't really make sense for the data value to be shown. Only if it's set to set. So that complicates things. Of course. Great. So, let me think. Right. Cool. So I guess, well, nope, don't want to do that. No, we can do this. If, oh, that kind of sucks. I guess we're gonna just copy this whole line. So I hate doing this little line of code, but it'll function. So if that is equal to a bool and this, oh wait, no, we don't need that. And data value, oh geez, gotta do whole friggin' thing. Give me a second here. And this is equal to set, or sorry, not set, toggle. So if that's the case for both of those things, then we're going to break out here, and we will just draw here. Draw this. That's all we care about. So let's go ahead and let that load. I don't think we have to do that exception for anything else. It's only if we set that to toggle. So that should be good. For example, when walking down to the Pokemon Center, where you can surf to the right to get Zapdos. Yes. Okay. Yes. Yeah. After, was that after Mount Moon? I remember it was the northeast part of the map, but I do remember the Pokemon. I was thinking that there wasn't a Pokemon Center around there, but I remember what you're talking about now. Yeah. That's after you get out of Mount Moon, right? No. It's to the east of Cerulean. There was some mountain range that you had to go through to get there. Maybe I'm thinking of the mountain range between Cerulean and Lavender Town. I don't remember the name of it, but it's not Mount Moon, because Mount Moon is between Pewter City and Cerulean City. I'm surprised that I remember the geography of Kanto so well. I mean, terribly, but well enough. 4 Team Rocket members jump you, and suddenly Lorelei comes down the river, and a Lapras kicks 3 of your asses while you handle 1 rocket. Oh, jeez. Huh. Wait, Lorelei, like the Elite Four Lorelei? Huh. I guess that's it. That's not too bad. I do kind of like how they've, over the years, increasing or made the gym leaders and Pokemon or Elite Four more important to the story. Just because in the original ones they were kind of a they were non-characters, right? Like you never met the Elite Four in the first generation outside of their statuses. You never even see them walk. You only see them stand. And that slowly got better over the years, I think. I think starting around, I want to say, I guess Gold and Silver kind of started it with Lance, since he was the Pokemon champion. Anyway, so we're going to set this to toggle. Nice. So that goes, ooh, what just happened? Okay. That was weird. Don't know what happened there. Okay, sure. Let's go ahead and do set there. I'm not going to worry about that. Okay. So now you can see that we do have all of these various types. We can see their values. We can get various behaviors, or at least we can set them. So now we need to actually code the part that will examine all of our set values and then handle everything for us. So we're going to jump over to verb, and we are going to go over here to update output data. Go to definition. So now we're going to complicate this a lot more. Okay. It brings up her name as question mark, question mark, question mark until she tells you who she is after the battle. I totally recognize her from the manga, though, and lost my shit. I mean, she does have a very distinct design. If I recall correctly, she has... I don't think she has looped red hair. I think she just has, like, kind of a longer red hair. And then in the original one, I'm pretty sure she was wearing, like, a short skirt and, like, a more semi-formal blouse of some kind, but it's been a while. And obviously, I'm assuming that they've changed her design somewhat. Dang that. Oh, so funny story about Pokemon and the 3 question mark thing. You know how at the beginning of every game it asks you to name your rival? So I'm going to go ahead and do a switch statement here, and we're going to say switch output type, I think is what I wanted. Oh, no. Output data type. There we are. So in Pokemon Gold and Silver, when you are introduced to your rival, you see him, I think, peeking through a window into Professor Elm's laboratory. And I think, or maybe it's when you confront him after he stole a Pokemon. I forget exactly the sequence of events. either way, when they asked, obviously when you talk with him the first time, he just has the 3 question marks. And when Professor Elm asked me, like, did you see that guy? What was his name? I legitimately put in question mark, question mark, question mark because I didn't know what his name was. I didn't realize that it was prompting me to name the character at that moment. Um, so for the rest of my first playthrough of Pokemon Gold, my rival's name was just question mark, question mark, question mark. And I just never realized that I was supposed to give him a name. uh, it was pretty amusing to me as a kid. Well, actually, I had no idea what was going on as a kid. As an adult, it's amusing looking back at that. Um, okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and say case variable type dot bool. We're gonna break out case variable type dot string. We're gonna break out case variable type dot int. Break out case variable type dot float. Break out. Okay. So if it's a bool, we only want to check 2 things. So we're going to say switch. I think we want to say output type. No, I'm sorry, output value. Okay, I apparently don't remember. Output data value. That's what it is. Yeah. Data value. Case. So there are only 2 things that I care about for bools. That's going to be toggle. That's a special case, so we're going to do that. We're going to say break, and otherwise we're just gonna have a default case, and we'll say breakout after that. And that is pretty simple in that we're just going to go ahead and copy this, paste that in, delete this. Let's go ahead and move this down to here. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and say. So if it's set to toggle, then we want to say not session.getBool. Don't have to worry about that. Okay. So we're just going to reverse it from whatever that is. And if it is set to a specific value, then we want to do set bool. Why on earth would I do it this way? That is terrible. So instead of data value.toString.toBool, we're just going to go ahead and say output data bool value. That's all we care about there. All right. So with the string, pretty much all we care about is setting a value, but we can't actually do anything there. So I'm going to make this a virtual function. It's a verb. It's a verb. It's a verb. It's a verb. It's a verb, which means that it can't be overridden, which means frustration. That makes things more difficult. Picture of Lorelei. Aha. Yeah, okay. That's about what I remembered. Aha! I forgot to mention the glasses. And now to take that down before Nintendo takes all the money for this stream. All like 2 cents of it. I do like the design though. I was always kind of sad that she never got more time because there aren't a ton of like hard trainers that used ice. I remember like that's kind of always been the case. At least that I can think of. I guess there was a handful, but there's never a lot. Not compared to some of the other ones like fire trainers or even dragon trainers. It seems like ice gets less trainers than they do. Um, Mario Party is interesting too. They've done some new things with it in terms of the coin getting. The stars cost 10. Wow, 10 coins really instead of 20. Wow, they really cut that. Huh. So string, huh? That is regrettable. I don't know what to do there. I will have to figure that out. For now, we're just focusing on int and float. All right. So we need to do another switch for our data value. Let's go ahead and get rid of this. We're going to say increment. Actually, no, I'm going to do this So this is if it's set. This is going to be set int, and then we're going to say output data value int value. Pretty sure I can get rid of that, so we don't have to constantly do the name stuff. All right, and then on top of that, we're going to go ahead and say, so this is increment. And here is where it gets a little awkward. So I need to say session.getInt based on our output ID. And then I need to say plus output data int value. Okay. And we're going to go ahead and just copy this. We're going to change this to decrement. And we will also do that. Let's set it to minus, I guess. That makes sense. Okay. If it's set, that's pretty much all we care about. So we only care about set, increment, and decrement. We don't care about true, false, or toggle. Yep, that makes sense. Okay, so that's our int. It's essentially going to be the same for our float values. So let's go ahead and come back down here. We're going to change this to set float on all of these. Get float. And then put float value. Paste that. All right, so let's let that load. And we're gonna have to give it a test. Yeah, first place in the mini games gets 8 coins, second gets 4, third gets 2, fourth gets none. Huh, interesting. So it's a lot less all or nothing now. Yeah, that makes sense. That was always, I guess, one of the shortcomings of the original ones was if you just had someone who's better at the mini games, then you just never got money. Well, within certain types of mini games, obviously. So that's an interesting one. Although it's surprising because that means that they increased the amount of coins on average that everyone gets, but they've decreased the amount of or the cost of stars. Because I think, how much did you used to get for winning mini games? Was it 10 coins? That seems like a lot. Maybe it was. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and let's just test this. So I need to have some output IDs, of course. So I'm just gonna add a third one that I'm gonna do. Cabin. That's good. That's good for me. So let's come back here. We're gonna go ahead and say bear angry. We will make it an int value. We will increment it by 1 each time that this gets hit. Except it will not do that right now. And I will show you what happens. I've forgotten what my cheat codes are. I think I might remember what it is. Let's see if I can remember this. Oof. That is going to be problematic. Okay, so I'm going to say SOS. I think I did this. Ah, dang it. It's not. Hold on. I've forgotten what my own codes are. Let's see. Ah, there it is. The get bool stuff. Okay. I do have get float rate, yeah. Can I just add a get? Honestly, nah, probably not. Alright, let's go ahead and hit play. 10 coins was what it used to be? Okay. There are lots of different ways to spend coins too. Somehow it just seems to work. Still trying to figure it out. Mostly it's because I sometimes don't use these codes for long stretches of time, so I just forget them. Not check, it's get float, and then Okay, so you can see that bear angry is 0. I'm not a huge fan of having our debug up there, but that's fine for now, whatever. Um, so if we go over here, we're going to say hit. Let's go ahead and say SOS get float bear angry. Okay, we're going to go ahead and do, oh, that's interesting. Hit. Oh, well. We have a Stack Overflow. What happened there? Oh, I was doing a float also, which is somewhat problematic. Because that was, oh, well, that's interesting. Hmm. How interesting. What did I do? Oh, that's why I thought name. Of course. Okay. I probably should check to make sure that I did that for floats as well. Yeah, no, that looks good. Okay. Um, so let's let that go again. So that the reason that that exception fired when it did is because right now we only update um, our values at the end of a at the end of an interaction stack. So yes, so what happens there is hitting it does not increment it each time you hit it. Rather, it increments it at the very end. Um, and that is not okay. That's not meant to sound questioning. Like it's definitely not okay. Let's go ahead and let this. We'll run through this again um, to show you that in action, basically. So we're gonna go ahead and say SOS get int and then bear angry. Okay, bear angry is 0. We're just gonna go ahead and say hit again. If we do that, it's 0. Hit. Okay, now if we do this, it's 1. If we hit again, it's 2. So that's not as useful as I would like. And in order to make that work in a way that would be more consistent with what we want, I need to make it so that if it is set to, if it's a number and it's set to increment or decrement, then it should be considered every time. If it is anything else, it should only happen at the end. Maybe I should just, skip the middleman and, or rather, add a middleman to manage that, so I could have a bool value that says like evaluate every interaction or something like that. So here in our inspector, if we look at this, uh, we could add a little option here that's like evaluate data every interaction or something like that, which is a terrible name, but if that's toggled, then it would basically check that value every time you interact with it with that specific verb. And if it's false, then it's only going to do it at the very end. It might just be best for me to expose that so that I don't have to try to kind of guess what I'm going to need. I can just have a simple bool check on it. So yeah, I think I'm going to do that. Let's go ahead and stop playing. We're going to come back to here, come back to verb. So we do have everything here working. It's just not quite doing what we want. So let's go ahead and we're going to get rid of you because we don't need to worry about you. I'm going to hit save. Okay. I'm going to get rid of this. At least I moved it to a separate function to make that easier to do. So perhaps, well, no, that would. So I suppose suppose the easy thing to do would be to move this over to here. Do that, and then I can actually move this part down to here. I'm just going to say if this, then we'll return. We're not done yet. That's just me putting that code there. So now I can basically just have this be here. Let's go ahead and move this comment down to here. Paste that in. And now we're going to go up to here, and we're going to just add public bool evaluate every interaction is equal to false. Let's go ahead and tooltip that. If true, the target data will be evaluated every time this verb is used. Okay. This is going to be fun. So part of the challenge in updating this, which by the way should probably have coding, is that I actually have a fairly extensive rework that I need to do if this is going to really be taken advantage of, like these new mechanics. Well, they're not really mechanics, but these new functionalities. We'll let this go, and then I'll figure out what I need to figure out after that, because it'll tell me what I want to know. So let's go back up to here. We just need one more thing here. Let's go ahead and come back up to here. We're going to go to here. I'm just going to go ahead and copy this. We're just going to paste this down here. Right here. Okay. So this is going to be evaluate every interaction. Not going to worry about you. Okay. And then we need to just go back down. And I need to change my height so that it is 1 more larger. So 12. All right. Let's go ahead and let that compile. That should show that evaluate every interaction. Oh, you know what? I can totally rename that to evaluate every time. That's much shorter. Let's go back up. Output audio. There we are. Okay, let's let that compile. All right. Well, thanks for stopping by, and thanks for the subscription. Ugh. It's always good talking with you too. I hope you have fun playing Let's Go. And hopefully the future interactions with the Elite Four are as fun as Lorelei's were. So, see you later, man. Ooh, that's good. The Unity Collaborate symbol is red. Ooh, I love it when it does that. All right. Oh, God, it feels like I have so much of a gap between these guys. Why? I feel like it's getting longer. It's crazy. Not crazy. Yeah, this is definitely more of a gap. Like, look at that. Like, that is... Why? Why are you so... Ugh. The height has to be messed up then. That's interesting. I wonder what that is. We'll leave it for now. It's not too much of a problem. It's more of an eyesore than anything else. Okay. So evaluate every time. If true, the target data will be evaluated every time this verb is used. Nice. We probably only need to do that. Well, yeah, I think we only really need to show that if it's set to increment or decrement. So I think we're going to go back to here. And on update output data, I'm going to say if this, I'm going to say if update, no, not update, evaluate every time, or this, oh, I'm sorry, no, if not that, and it is less than that, then we will return. Otherwise, we do want it to actually increment and decrement as we would expect, which I think is what that's going to do. So, okay. I think we can let that compile, and we should be able to just check off evaluate every time, which will let this properly increment as we hit it successively. But my concern is that we can continue to hit it past what we would expect. And that's not too much of an issue, provided that we don't have to have a delicate balance at any time between two values. So, for example, if we have a torch that's lit, if we want to light our 3 torches, we don't want you to be able to light one torch and then keep lighting it on fire and just getting that result. So that's going to complicate things a little bit more. If I set you to be toggle, okay. So we're going to keep that as increment. Let's run through this again. We'll just check to see if it's incrementing as we would expect. Oh, excuse me. And actually, we know that it's going to increment past it. So I need to figure out a way to counteract that. So we're going to go ahead and say SOS get int bear angry. We're going to go ahead and just say hit. Nice, it's 1. Nice. Nice. But then we can keep going, and we'll just keep incrementing it. Yeah. Which, for something like the bear angry, that's not much of a problem, because that's just an upwards counting one, and we only care if it gets to be a certain amount. Now here's actually where it gets kind of fun. So I'm going to try doing this again. I'm going to go ahead and say SOS get int bear angry. Oh, I spelled that wrong. Hold on, sorry. There we go. So that's 8, but if I hit it again, it's going to be 9. Which might not seem like a problem, but the problem is I want it to reset on interact, which complicates things. So, well, jeez. Reset on interact. That is a problem number, or that is a problem right now. I don't really have a good method for knowing what value should be reset to. And I can't reset it when you stop interacting. I have to reset it when you start interacting. Oh man, that sucks a lot. So the reason that it's a problem is, let's think in the example for my bear angry. This is a little Easter egg in the cabin level where you can punch a stuffed bear, and if you punch it enough times, you find out that it's not dead. It's just a bear that's there. But I would like to. So right now, what it does is it just you can keep punching it, and it won't really matter. I mean, at a certain point, it'll kill you. But if I were to try and set up a system that would support int values for that instead of just doing a basic interaction there, it would require me to have a starting value when you start interacting with it, and then the verb would have to be able to set that. Excuse me, I needed to yawn apparently. But that's a little complicated trying to figure this out. Okay. Harumph, 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 harumph. Let's see. I'm not really sure what a good idea would be here. I could stipulate a value to set it to whenever you reset. Um, I hmm, ugh. Okay. Um, Alternatively, instead of calling set the way that I'm calling it, I'm gonna go ahead and come back here. So currently the way that I call set when I'm incrementing values is I get our int value, and then I add or subtract to it. But perhaps it might be better to make that more isolated. And instead of doing get int, we would say set int. Nope, 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 nope. Can't do that. That closes off too many possibilities. Okay. Um, hmm. So I need it to be able to increment and decrement, but also reset if necessary, um, because otherwise that could cause problems. So hmm, I could change it. Um, no, 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 no. No, I cannot. Uh, so some possible approaches here are one, I can have a default value that it gets reset to on interaction. That is not great though because I could have multiple objects that all affect the same int value. Like, let's say you have an object that you have to punch, and then you have to punch another object, and those all kind of add up to a different counter. Um, Also, I'm going to have to change evaluate every time into an enum, aren't I? Yep, 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 yep. Cool. Um, I might also have to set reset on interact to a different thing, which makes sense. Just kind of sucks. All right. So I need to make these enums reset on interact, um, and evaluate every frame or every time. So reset on interact, we will change to an enum that has the values reset, don't reset, and reset to default. Which reset to default will have a value field that it can fill in. Meanwhile, evaluate every time we'll switch over from a bool to an enum as well, and it will have values for evaluate once, evaluate every interaction, and evaluate um, well, no, I guess it would have four technically. So you'd have evaluate once, evaluate every interaction, evaluate every interaction until the limit is reached. That might be enough. That won't stop it if you stop though. So, complicating this a little too much, I feel. Um, so I'm going to go ahead and go up to here. We're going to say reset on interact. Let's find all references. Okay, so we're not really doing too much there. Let's go ahead and set interactive object. Create. Okay, just create C# script. I'm going to call this interaction reset type. That makes sense to me, name wise. Not the best name, not very succinct, but it should work. so let's open that up. While it's doing that, I'm going to take a drink. All right, so this is a byte. This is an enum. This is text quest, and this is gone. All right, so none is going to be equal to 0. I'm going to say don't reset on interaction. Then we will have reset. Right. So I'm trying to lump two different systems technically together. Let me think. Okay. So we'll say reset is equal to 5, and then reset to default is equal to 10. And then we're going to say reset output index only on interaction versus reset output index and output data value on interaction. All right. So if we go back here to verb, we look at whatever reset on interact is doing. Reset, I believe, is called whenever we interact with an object. Yep, right there. So we're going to need to change this from reset on interact to basically a switch statement to determine what to do on that. All right, so I'm going to go up to here. Oh, this is going to suck. It's going to change all of my data again. Okay. Oh, man. All right, well, we're going to keep that anyway because we can't really use that exact line. Instead, we need to say public interaction reset type. Jeez. Reset on interact is kind of still a good name, actually. Crud. Okay. So I need to change this interaction reset type. I guess that's the exact name of the enum, though. Just call it interaction reset. Ugh, terrible name. Interaction reset is equal to interaction reset dot reset. Let's go ahead and tooltip that because we're going to use it. So we're going to say determines how output indexes and values are reset when interacting with the object. Okay. And then on top of that, we are going to want to change this. We need to make a new enum that I guess we're going to call create C# script. What is it? Interaction data evaluation type. Oh, you stupid. It didn't capitalize T. Great. It's not even a typo, it's just a capitalization problem. And because of how Unity serializes these things, it's a nightmare to rename, because of course it is. Type. It might not register that as a changed name, which will make me quite angry. So let's see. But this will just be an enum with a few values in it that basically determines how data is evaluated when you interact with it. So let's go ahead and open that up. So this is a byte. this is a capital T instead of a lowercase one. This is an enum. This is in text quest. Oop. Text quest. Why do you never capitalize? Wait. There we go. Okay. Get rid of this. So, our evaluation types are going to be. So this will be. I don't know if I want to call it default. I guess we'll just call it once is equal to 0. Then we'll say every interaction is equal to 5, followed by every interaction. What do I want to call this? It's every interaction within indexes. That's a terrible name. I guess I could call it like clamped or something like that as equal to 10. So this will be evaluate once the, well, yeah, that's a good question. Ooh. Evaluate after the output index has reached its maximum. And I think actually I should do once clamped is equal to, so this will be 5, then this will be 10, this will be 15. So this is going to be evaluate after the output, evaluate only once the output index has reached its maximum and no further. Okay, and then this one is going to be evaluate after every interaction with the verb. And then let's go ahead and copy that. It's going to be pretty much the same thing here. And we're going to say evaluate after every interaction with the verb until the index has reached its maximum. All right. So the 4 use cases there are once is what the current behavior is. So it will evaluate once the output index has reached its maximum, and it will continue to evaluate every time you interact with it after that. Once clamped, will do pretty much the same thing, except it will only do it once you the one time that you reach the output index maximum, and then it will not go any farther. Every interaction will do pretty much the opposite of once, where it'll evaluate every interaction with that verb that you use, including past the maximum amount of output indexes, and then every interaction clamped does that as well, except it stops after the maximum input or maximum output index is reached. So the question here now is, how do I persist that value? Because the maximum output index reached is not a consistent or a persistent number. So that means that I need to find a way of retrieving that, which sucks. That drastically complicates this. So. Oh, you make this so much more difficult. So yeah. So probably this is going to be public interaction data. Oop. Oh, good. Oh, good. Thanks. So that means that this is not working as we would expect. So we're going to have to call this data evaluation is equal to, of course not, dot once by default. Yeah, so this is going to cause all kinds of freaking problems with me. So I think what's happened here is that Visual Studio has just kind of borked itself. So I need to change this. So I'm going to have to save and close this and then let Unity recompile and then let it open. And you set this back, didn't you? Dollars to donuts, that T becomes a lowercase t. But let's find out. And while it's doing that, I'm going to take a drink. Gotta stay hydrated. Especially when you're talking for 2 hours. So, hopefully that will work as expected. If it does not, I will be a little miffed, a little upset. Um, but if we can get this working properly, then that will mean that our data values will be able to set more than just a single bool. Now, they should be able to support integers, floats, strings, and bools, as well as incrementing integers and floats, and toggling bools. So that'll just let our data structures be, yep, there it is. You can see it went back to the lowercase t. So that'll just let our data structures be a little bit more intricate, which will open up for new puzzles because it'll let me expand what I can do easily with my data. So cool. So in order to get this to be renamed properly, I have to do this. I have to misname it. Misname? Is that correct? Misname? I mean, there's misnomer. I don't think it's misname. I have to rename it something that's incorrect, let it compile, let Unity realize that that's its new name, and then I need to go back and fix its name. That is because Unity serialization is capitalization agnostic. So if you mistype something by forgetting to capitalize something, you can't just rename it by capitalizing that letter. You have to rename it something different, then rename it again to be what you actually want it to be. I do not know why Unity did it that way, but that is the way that they chose to do it. So it just means that whenever something like this happens, it takes way longer than it really should to fix. Okay. Okay, there we are. So now I can do this. Type. Finally. All right. And now, once that's up, I can actually double click on this to open it up. And it should all behave correctly again. At least I'm hoping. Hello, the real climber. Welcome to the Devstream. I think I lost some important info. What did you do? So that little stint that we were just doing there for about a minute was me trying to rename a script because I had accidentally, when I was naming the script originally, I had accidentally named this interaction data evaluation type with a lowercase t, but that's not proper case for script names. So when I went into the script, I corrected it here. But because of how Unity serializes asset names, so to show you a quick example, actually, I'll go ahead and say Show in Explorer. I'm just gonna real quick create a text message or not a text message, a text document here. So I'm just gonna call this like test. Well, actually, I'll do it with a lowercase t because I don't want it to be correct. So if we let that compile, that's gonna just re-import everything in that folder. So we should see a little test object show up. When it doesn't recognize it's a mono behavior. No, the mono behavior stuff was because Visual Studio was kind of borked. It can get like that if the Unity project that's connected to it is having weird compilation errors, which sometimes happens because of that naming problem. Anyway, so you can see that we have a blank document here called test. So if I wanted to rename this to test with a capital T, I can't just do that. I can't just delete the lowercase t and make it a uppercase T. Give it a second. Because if I click off of that and then click back on, oh, interesting. It's actually keeping it, but it is lagging to hell and back, which is kind of funny. So I'm just going to go ahead and re-import this object again. Huh. Interesting. Maybe it only does that on scripts. We'll let that go for now. I'm going to change this to see if that makes it update properly. So we're going to say determines how the target data is set on interaction when interacting with the object. Okay. So we're going to come back here, and when that refreshes, it should set that back to a lowercase t. We saw that happen up here with our evaluation type. On the other hand, though, it's possible that they only do that for script objects. Huh. I had scripts not recognizing mono behaviors and reopening it fixes that. Yeah. No, that's yeah. Usually, whenever Visual Studio gets kind of wonky, it's all you really need to do is close it and then reopen it. Sometimes, if it's really messing up, you need to close Visual Studio, close Unity, delete the C# project files from the project, and then reopen Unity and reopen Visual Studio, and that will usually force refresh everything so that it's nice and up to date. That does mean that you have to compile everything again, but that's usually not too bad. Even on the biggest projects, compilation time is usually not way more than a minute. And looks like they did fix that problem, at least with this, but weird. Yeah, it is correct. Huh. Well, maybe they fixed it. Either way, let's go ahead and just say delete. But that's weird because it totally happened to the script, so maybe it only happens to script assets? Or maybe Visual Studio stomped on that change. That's possible. Anyway, so we're going to go ahead and come back here. Oh, you're kidding me. Deleting a text asset forces a of course. I suppose I shouldn't be surprised. All right. So now we need to basically change it so that we're using not reset on interact or evaluate every time, but interaction reset and data evaluation. So we're going to go back over here to verb drawer. And I'm going to just grab this. So here is our data evaluation. We're just going to copy that. And we're going to paste that in right here. Okay. Then we're going to come back to here, and we're going to grab our interaction reset. Copy that, go up to verb drawer. And we want to change that to that. Get rid of this. I do not need most of these things. I'm pretty sure I can confidently get rid of that. Okay. So let's let that compile. So now our inspector for the test object should show, instead of reset on interact as a bool, it should say interaction reset, and that should be an enum. Same thing with evaluate every time. And then we need to change up our code a little bit to support those, but that should be a step in the right direction. Oh man, I'm getting hungry. I had a semi-early breakfast this morning, and I haven't eaten really lunch, so it'll be good for a early dinner, I think. All right, so you can see that we have this. So we have once clamped, every interaction clamped. That's all nice. Interaction reset is none by default usually. And then we can say reset and reset to default. If we reset to default, we do have to figure out how we want to do that. And oh boy, that really complicates things. Yup. I really don't want to have another enum in there. So the only problem I have with reset to default is, well, no, no, I can't do it like that. So we do reset, then all that really does is reset the output index. If we do it to reset to default, that should reset the output index as well as mark our target ID value at a specified default value. Perhaps that's not terrible. It just means that I have to be a little more creative with how I set interactions to reset. It's a little more complicated, but I think I can make it work. All right. It does unfortunately mean that we need 3 more things. actually, it means I need 4 things. Cool. So that sucks a lot. Okay, hold on. So if we do randomize output, that also complicates things a lot. Ah! Okay, so I'm going to tooltip some of this. So randomize output basically makes it so that instead of being in sequential order, as you uh, as you set a value or as you interact with an object, it just randomly picks an output, and that complicates things, of course. Um, Speaking of edums, I can use some help on them. I have a problem where the variable 0 to 8 are not in correct order. What do you mean? Like the values that are associated with 0 to 8 are not in the correct order? Or you have something that you want to add in there, but they're not in the correct order? I guess what's the issue? Yeah. Okay, so if we randomize output, we're going to say if true, will randomly select outputs instead of showing them in order. Okay, I got some data I need to get from my class and change to object. And 0 is up, 1 is right, 2 is down, 3 is left in rotation. I just can't do 45 times the number. What do you mean? Okay, I think. Okay. Hmm. 4 would be upright. I get what you're saying. Um, right. So the end goal is just to have an enum that you can select from, and then you want that to determine an angle, correct? Okay, so if true, I'll randomly select outputs instead of showing them in order. Um, right, so from here, we need to change our code. So we're going to come back down here to update output data, and we're going to say, right, of course. Oh my goodness. Why would I do that? But I am going to do that apparently. Ah. Persistence. Okay. Sorry, I'm getting so frustrated and I'm yawning to myself. Um, yeah, so I can be an enum number and get an angle sort. It's almost like a method thinking of it. Yeah, I mean the easiest way to do that would just be to put it into a method and then do a switch statement and say, if my direction is equal to right, then return 45 degrees or 90 degrees or whatever. Um, that's probably the fastest way. There, you could do it purely based on math and the value of the number if you did a modulo operation, but that would become. I mean, if you weren't ever going to change it, it would probably work. You could do something like this. Um, so I'm just going to go ahead and say. So obviously your enum would be different, but you could do something like if t uh, modulo 4. Oh, hold on. Okay, are you gonna just force me to wrap all of this? Oh, right, because that's a int operation. Um, so that wouldn't actually be what you do, but you would basically say like you would take your enum value and then you would do a modulo divided by 4, and then you would have to subtract that from the int value divided by 4, and that would give you your final result, I believe. So you'd have to do a little bit of modulo math. Is greater than or equal to 4, return 45 plus input minus 4 times 90. I mean, honestly, if you're just doing that, the modulo approach would work. You could also just do a basic switch statement, so it'd be like switch. In my case, it'd be output data type, and then you'd say like case dot right, case dot left, and such. That would work. If you want it to be purely based on math, modulo would probably be a little bit more clean. But the way that you have works. So if input is equal to 0, return 0. If input is equal to 1. Oof. I mean, if it's an enum, if it is in an enum form, that is surprisingly difficult to say. Then you could probably just do a switch statement. It would be a little bit cleaner because then you wouldn't be converting enums into integers, which are magic numbers, and humans don't know what those mean. And you could also, in theory, reorganize that enum later, which would mean that your numbers would no longer be valid. So if you're using an enum and not a raw number, I would definitely recommend using the enum values for comparisons instead of int values, just to try to keep things cleaner and more robust. Okay. Anyway, so we're going to say, so we need to set it up to pay attention to our evaluation types. So we probably want, so instead of saying if not, evaluate every time, we're going to have to do a switch statement. Of course. So we're going to have to do switch data evaluation case evaluation type dot. So we only want to block it if it's once. If it's every interaction, we don't actually ever need to check for that case, I guess. But if it's once, then we're going to break. I feel like once should actually be the same thing. Once and once clamp should be the same thing, because otherwise it's not actually once, it's just every time. But I guess that's not too terrible. So we're going to go ahead and say if, it's pretty much just going to be this. And we'll say return. Otherwise, we're going to say, actually, does my output index increment? Nope. Shoot. That's not ideal. So my output increment, or my output index increments every time you interact with an object. But it does stop itself, so it doesn't go out of bounds. The problem is that makes it impossible for me to check if you're actually past that value. So that's not good. That means I need to essentially store that value as something else, which really, really sucks. And I really, really don't want to do that because that just complicates things unnecessarily. Which might be the moral of today's story, actually. How can people not sort their note directions? Yeah. Well, I mean, hopefully at least your angles can be in understandable values, so they're not going to be either Euler angles. I'm assuming they're not, just because it seems like you're using vector angles, and that y is up and not forward, which is always confusing to me. But some engines do that. Okay, so problematic. Yes, it is. I don't have a way of checking if it's reached its maximum value, which, how can I stop that? You're using Unity? Well, cool. That's what I use. But what can I do here? I need to set. I need some way of basically knowing when my outputs have reached their final length. Um, private bool, the ultimate fallback for inelegant code. Private bools. Ugh. Ah, dang it. I'm just upset that I can't think of a more elegant solution. Okay. Private bool would work. It just sucks. So output index gets reset whenever we call reset on interact, which, by the way, this now needs to say switch interaction reset. And we're going to say case blah 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 dot reset break. I'm just going to say output index, of course, is equal to 0. Okay. Then we're going to say case interaction reset default. Break that out. Say output index. Stop it. Output index equal to 0. But then we also need to set our value back to a default value. Right. So that's not great. Not great at all. Um, man, I hate it when I do this. I try to streamline my code, but the streamlining requires so many new things that it just does the opposite. Jeez. So we need some way of knowing this, and I really, really, really do not want to have a persistent value here. It can only persist as long as this object exists. It should not persist throughout the entire game. That sucks. Okay. Uh, I can't think of a good way of doing it. The only way I can think that's reasonable is to have a clamped value that I can reference, and then I can just say, like, if the target integer is less than this value, then you can increment. If it is greater than this value, then it does not increment or decrement or whatever. Really, really, really don't want to do that, but I can't think of a better way of doing this, honestly. It just sucks because it means that I have to have another value. Um, Granted, it's only one of the two, but still. No, 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 it's 3 of them. 4 of them for resetting. I. This complicates things so much. Let me think. The last thing I did to this code is pool objects. I'm quite proud of it. Well, cool. Pooling systems are pretty fun to work on. So, let me think. I don't want to reverse engineer it. I really don't want to do that. I really don't want to have default values either. It would be much more convenient if I could just set values to hard set defaults, but then I might have sections that I want to have different hard set values. So I guess I should just expose that. Ugh, it just sucks. Yeah, okay. So... Ugh. No, that wouldn't work either. There are a handful of ways that I could do this. I could change how I set values. I could add offset data values in addition to the core data values, which would suck even more. So instead of having just like an int value that I count up, I would have the original int value, and then I would have a separate int value that's the amount to offset that by. That would become more easy to manage, but it would also mean that I have twice as much data as I would need, and that's kind of pointless. Um, I really, really, really don't want to do that. So, ugh. Okay. Right. This is a pain. God, it might. Ah, it might just be easier to have some sort of class that I use for this. Um, Something like this, basically. Uh, um, ooh, all kinds of wrong there. Float value is equal to 0f. So I could do this instead. So instead of having these three fields here, I could just have one, and I could do the same thing for interaction reset as well. That would work. Output value, output data value, new output value. So let's go ahead and get rid of these. That does mean I'm going to have to change this. So instead of this fun stuff, we're going to change this to output data value. And I think I can do this dot bool value. Pretty sure I can anyway. We'll find out. So this is int value. This is float value. All right, let's go ahead and see if that compiles as we would expect. I guess I can probably do the same thing here. So we're going to come back to here. Reset data values. Okay. And that should work. So let's go ahead and let that compile. We should, like, everything should look the same. It should all compile as we expect, except I totally forgot to do that. Oops. So this is going to be output data value dot bool value. Output data value dot int value. Okay. Float value. Let's go ahead and copy these as well. All right. That should fix that little problem. Learned raycasting. Nice. What are you using the raycasting for? let's see. So we'll let that compile. And any day now. Shazam. Nice. Cool. So let's go ahead and clear that. Come back here. And there we are. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. So we're going to set that to 24.51, except it can't do that because it's an int, which is good. So we're just going to set that to 1. If we change this to a float, we do 24.5. How nice. Set that back to an int. Set that to a bool. Cool. Set that to an int again. Cool. So that all seems to work. So that all I'm confident in. The only problem comes from the interaction reset. Because that will not work. It just will not. Ugh. I just can't think of a good way to do this. We're determining stuff in VR, trying to make a VR editor for Beat Saber. Okay. Well, cool. That'll be really interesting. VR editor for Beat Saber. That could be really cool, actually. You'll have to let me know how that turns out. I'm curious. I actually only recently started playing Beat Saber. It's a lot of fun. So, I might end here today. We should, in theory, have our data values, well, we know that they're setting. And we do have them supporting incrementing and decrementing values. But the problem is that I don't quite have the structure in place to handle resetting to default values and all that. That really complicates things. Now, part of this might just be that I don't have to worry about it because I don't have any interactions that require that right now. But I'd honestly prefer to just figure out how to do this so that I can have a more robust system. I like to have those things, just because it adds to my arsenal of things that I can do. So I think I need to design this and sketch this out a little bit on paper to figure out how I want this to flow. So, yeah, because there are a lot of factors I have to consider here. Not very well this far. Well, you're still learning it, so I mean, it'll get better with time, like all things. Well, usually. So, okay, I think we're gonna go ahead and stop for the day. So we didn't get as far as I would like, but I did kind of expect that we would run into some snags with complexity, just because it's very easy to overcomplicate these types of things, and it's entirely possible that I was starting to do that. So I'm gonna hunker down and try to figure out how I wanna organize this a little bit more, and I wanna present it in the inspector. So, all right, announcements. None really off the top of my head. We should be up for our stream next week. I think New Year's Day is is Tuesday, so that one might be a little bit more iffy. It should be fine, but I'll keep everyone posted on the Discord and Twitter and all that. But aside from that, no real announcements. So I think that's a pretty good place to stop. So, as always, I want to thank you all very much for watching, and I will see you all next time.